This Toy Tractor Times video will share tips and ideas on how to detail a 1/64th John Deere 8RT track tractor. We'll take a look at the variety of track options that are available for these big tractors, whether they are a standard wide track for tillage or a narrow row crop track. We'll also take a look at hitch ideas, handrails, light accessories, and other details that you can add to your 1/64th 8RT to make it look just like the real machine working out in the field. Toy Tractor Times is at the 2018 St. Louis Farm Toy Show. We're here with Hector Matthews, who is always bringing us very interesting and high detailed models, and we're going to be taking a look at some 8RT detailing. And Hector, what can you tell us about this track model?
Well, the 8RT is a 3D printed project that started out really looking for, hey, I'd like to put some more detail in the track roller frame and make it a little bit more accurate. I don't have the real model to compare with here today, but if you look at yours at home perhaps, or maybe you remember, the front idler, it has an axle that goes through on the real tractor, but on the model. On the real tractor that doesn't exist because the wheels are supported off the track roller frame, the rear axle, and the center hard bar. So I was looking at, hey, I'd like to have a more detailed track roller frame and get away from that inaccurate front idler axle. And when you start looking at how to do that and where do you draw the line, it becomes a slippery slope. And the slope where I ended up on was this group of parts that we see over here, which being all white and unfinished and all packed into their kit form is kind of hard to see. But all of this ends up getting combined with a stock hurdle tractor to end up with what we've got over here to the right. So this is the track frames, the kind of the rear and lower portion of the tractor. So from the hard bar here back and all of this stuff around the axle. So if you're looking at your standard hurdle tractor, there's a part where the roller wheels in the center, that's a separate piece in the casting that pops out of there. Basically, from there back, you cut horizontally, and then underneath the cab, there's a bump in where it goes from this rectangular area here under the cab to narrowing down just like the real tractor, or just like this does, that has had the kit added already. And that just cut off vertically, so then this new 3D printed lower and rear portion kind of sets up there and fits into there. So then you can also see some of the other 3D printed parts here, the steps. We also have the track roller frames itself. This is the hydraulic tensioning cylinder, the idlers, the rollers, which you can only see here on the finished product, and then also the drivers. This tractor here has the narrowest tracked option, 16 inches, and the 16-inch track option requires narrow drivers, narrow rollers. On the real tractor, there's two different options for drivers and rollers, one being narrow and one being wide. So you can see the two different driver widths here.
That's really neat that you can see the chevrons, and also I know that on the Ertl one, it's just a yellow wheel, where on the real machine, yep, you see that black inset.
Yep, on this 3D printed kit, the treads on the drivers and the idlers are separate, so that way you can you can paint your center yellow portion separately from the outer tread, and then combine them once you're done. And as you mentioned, there are chevron patterns in the driver treads, and the neat detail and detail capability of 3D printing has allowed that those tread patterns are included, which really show up nice, especially on the wider ones, and they don't get blended out by paint.
And on the inside of your track, we can see where the track connects, yep, with those wheels. And
you can see the track guides. What we're looking at here is one of the wider track options. This is a 24-inch track. The 8RT series of tractors came with options for either 16-inch single bar track, which is what we see on this tractor, an 18-inch dual bar track. So when I say dual bar, that's the difference between what we see here as a single bar on the track the track on the tractor, or the dual bar on this track that's just separate. And then this track that we're seeing here again is the 24-inch, and then there's one wider, which is a 30-inch track.
And those two larger ones are more for just heavy tillage, grain carting, and
yeah, more tillage, and where you're not trying to keep between the rows in a row crop application or something specific like that. Another thing that you think about when you think about track width and track spacing is where the tracks are spaced in and out from the tractors. So maybe how many rows you want to straddle. The model that we're seeing here is set up at 120-inch centers. So that would be for straddling 4 30-inch rows or 6 20-inch rows. The kit is set up so that the hard bar has these little rectangular slots in them, and those correspond with a bump that sits in the track roller frame in the place where the hard bar mounts. And so when that slides on here, it can sit and it can go into those bumps and nest at the right track spacing automatically. For those innermost one is at 72 inches, which is the narrowest track option available on the rear tractor. Then it's 80 inches and 88 inches, so that might be for 20-inch rows or 22-inch rows. And then there's another bump out here at 120. Those are just common track spacings. If you want to build the kit with a different track spacing, you just need to cut the bump off on the inside of the track roller frame and slide it into whatever position you want. But those bumps allow some of those common spacings to be a bit more convenient for the user. I'll just hold this and kind of turn it around a little bit so you can see some of the detail where when it's not covered up by cab or by the tracks and stuff. And if you look at where the body filler is, you can kind of get an idea of where some of the 3D printed structure ends and where the hurdle tractor begins again.
And you're you're basically using these parts also to cover up seams and things, because this is a 2 casting half model that's riveted together.
Yep. So you can see there's still a seam here. You do fill you can fill the hood seam, so that can be nice and smooth there.
Definitely takes a lot of work, but it helps it look a lot more realistic. And
one other spot where a 3D printed part here is used underneath the engine. Ertl has cast in weights, and those weights are typical die cast weights that are stacked, so that the outside one is smallest and then they grow larger, which is dictated by the die cast process and how they must come out of the mold. Those don't really fit with the level of the detail of the rest of the kit, so there's a piece in the kit so that you can cut those out and then put a new weight hanger back in there. And there's 2 sets of 5-pack of weights that can be hung beside the tractor engine there. Speaking of weights, the original weights in the front end can be cut off, and a high detail weight bracket can be added there. And you can see that weight bracket with weights. And if I'm not mistaken, here I have the weight bracket by itself. So this is accurately modeled after the John Deere style. And
so do you go out and look at the real machines at a farm or a dealership?
Look at the real machines on a dealership typically, and take some measurements and do some modeling, and then realize you don't have quite enough measurements and quite enough pictures, and you repeat until you get it done. The whole 8RT project has quite a number of hours in it. It took probably 4 or 5 separate visits to the dealer to get the right information and to get it all put together and modeled correctly. So let's see some other things about this tractor. You can see that there's handrails, mirrors. Something that's a little bit unique about the RT series of tractors is a lot of times the left-hand mirror is mounted off the railing. It has flasher bars as you would typically see. as we look at this tractor, you can see that the rear end is highly detailed with an accurate drawbar, PTO, hydraulic stacks, etc. That adds a lot of nice detail to the tractor. Similarly, that same sort of detail is available in a wheeled kit. Once I had worked on the RT series, most of the geometry is the same in the rear. There's a couple measurements that are different for the placement of the rear axle and the placement of the hydraulic cylinders. But other than that, the key component placements are the same. So I was able to use a lot of the information that I had gained for building the RT series rear end and made a rear end for the R series. This is a fixed 3-point hitch on the rear. So this is all printed as one piece, and you just cut off the rear end of the tractor and just kind of grind around the rear axle housing. A little bit of a curved cut there, or kind of a curved detail grind, but other than that, it's pretty simple to fit that up. And the front of the drawbar here is a separate piece, so that you can trim it to the proper height and put the front of the drawbar in there. So if you've got a display or just a set of tractors that you're interested in having a more detailed 8RT, because some of the driver and idler features like we talked about are quite a bit different than the real tractor, and you're looking for some more detail there, and you're looking at, well, I've got a really nice 8RT because I've built this kit, and you're thinking that your 8R looks a little bit undetailed and not quite up to par. You can get that same level of detail for your 8R also.
Well, it was very informative, and I think it's interesting that, oftentimes if you're just driving by one of these tractors in the field or dealership lot, you think, oh, well, that's just one with tracks, or that one's got wheels, but there are just a lot of engineering differences and mechanical differences between the machines, and that often makes the modeling of them all the more difficult. But we certainly appreciate you taking the time to research these and add that proper detail and show us what's possible in 1/64 scale.
Yeah, well, it also often starts with, it's a project that I kind of want something for myself, and I'm interested in it myself, and then in order to get there and get one tractor figured out and done for myself, there's a lot of time, and so enough time that I can't justify building just one tractor for myself. So the 3D printing that's come along in the last couple of years has really made it possible to spend the time to get this level of detail into a tractor, because then you can share that as a kit with other modelers, and you can recoup some of the effort that you put into it.
Well, as always, thank you for taking the time to take part in the St. Louis Farm Toy Show, and we'll hope to see you back here in 2019 with some other exciting models.
No problem, Jason. Thanks for
Thanks,
sharing
Hector.
this with the community.